The quality of your life is the quality of your decisions. That's not just a catchy phrase, it's the truth that separates people who live with passion and purpose from those who wake up every day on autopilot, wondering why they feel stuck. Every choice you've ever made has brought you to this exact moment. Not the economy, not your parents, not your boss, not the government, your decisions. People like to say life is shaped by conditions, by circumstances, by luck, but the reality is that two people can live through the same circumstance and one finds power, opportunity, growth, while the other collapses. What's the difference? Decision, it's not about the conditions of your life, it's about the decisions that you make within those conditions. Think about it, most people think decisions are these giant, once-in-a-lifetime moments. But in reality, your destiny is shaped in the small daily choices, the choice to snooze or get up, the choice to say yes or no, the choice to focus on what's missing or what's already there, the choice to invest in yourself or distract yourself. That's where life is won or lost. Because when you make a real decision, when you cut off all other possibilities, you alter the direction of your life forever. That's the root of the word decide, to cut off. And yet most people don't decide. They hope, they prefer, they should. And shoulds don't create change. Musts do. Until something becomes a must, nothing will shift. Your brain is designed to keep you safe, not to make you extraordinary. So it will always whisper, stay comfortable, don't risk, don't change. That's survival mode. But if you only listen to that voice, you'll never discover the power you already have. Real decisions happen when you draw a line in the sand. When you say, I will never live like this again. I demand more from myself. I demand more from my life. That's when something changes inside you. You've had moments like that, moments when you finally decided to get out of the relationship that was killing your soul, or when you decided you were done with being broke, or when you finally made the call to change your body, your career, your family. And in those moments, it wasn't the external world that changed, it was you. Decisions are the ultimate power because they shape your identity. Every decision you make rewires your brain, reinforces who you believe you are. If you decide to give your best, if you decide to push beyond fear, if you decide to follow through, your identity expands. You no longer see yourself as someone who tries, you see yourself as someone who does. And identity is the strongest force in human behavior. We always act consistent with who we believe we are. If you want to change your life, don't start with willpower, start with identity. And that identity gets reshaped with every decision you make. But how do you shift from knowing this to living it? That brings us to the second truth: change your state, change your story, change your life. People think change starts with willpower, but that's like trying to fight gravity. It doesn't last. The fastest way to change anything in your life is to change your state. Your emotional state is the filter through which you experience the world. If you're in a state of fear, everything looks like a threat. If you're in a state of anger, everything looks like an attack. If you're in a state of gratitude, everything looks like a gift. And here's the kicker. You control that state more than you think. State is not some mystical thing. It's created by three forces: physiology, focus, and language. Change your body and you change your state. Stand up tall, breathe with power, move with energy, and you'll feel different immediately. Watch a world-class athlete before competition. They don't slump in the corner, they jump, they shake, they yell, they get into state. Most people live in collapsed physiology, shoulders down, shallow breath, slow movement. No wonder they feel depressed. It's created by motion. You can't sit like that and expect to feel alive. Then there's focus. Where focus goes, energy flows. Focus on what you can't control and you'll feel helpless. Focus on what's missing and you'll feel empty. Focus on what you already have, on what you can control, on what's possible, and your energy changes instantly. Most people are addicted to focusing on problems. They scroll, they compare, they obsess over everything that's wrong, and whatever you focus on, you feel. Focus on suffering, you'll feel suffering. Focus on strength, you'll feel strong. And the third piece is language. Words don't just describe reality, they shape it. Call something the end of the world, and you'll feel overwhelmed. Call it a little challenge, and suddenly it's manageable. You can destroy your state with your words, or you can lift it. People don't realize the vocabulary they use every day is hypnotizing them into weakness or strength. Change your language and you'll shift your story, because here's the deeper truth. The story you tell yourself is running your life. We all have a story about who we are, about what's possible, about why we can't or why we can. I'm too old. I'm not smart enough. I've always been this way. Those are stories. They're not facts. They're decisions you made about yourself years ago, and then you kept reinforcing them. But the moment you change your story, you change your destiny. Because if your story is, I'm unstoppable, I'm resourceful, I'll find a way, suddenly you'll act differently. You'll take risks. You'll pursue opportunities. You'll persist when most people quit. Your state influences your story, and your story influences your life. If you're in a lousy state, you'll tell yourself a lousy story. If you're in a peak state, you'll tell yourself a story of strength. That's why the first step is to master your state. Once you shift your body, your focus, and your language, you have the power to rewrite the narrative of your life. And once you rewrite the story, decisions that used to feel impossible suddenly become natural. That's the cycle. Decisions shape your identity. Identity shapes your state shapes your story, and your story shapes your life. Most people live in a loop they don't even know they're in. They're trapped in states of fear and frustration, telling themselves stories of limitation, making small decisions that reinforce a small identity. And then they wonder why they feel unfulfilled. But the moment you take control of your state, the moment you say no more, and decide to demand more of yourself, everything begins to change. Proximity is power. Who you spend time with shapes your destiny. Human beings are wired to adapt to the environment they're in. You don't just consciously choose habits, beliefs, or energy levels. You absorb them from the people around you. If you're constantly around people who complain, who lower their standards, who live in fear, you'll start to reflect that, not because you want to, but because identity is contagious. You can only rise to the level of the standards you're surrounded by. Think of it like a thermostat. If your inner circle is set to 70 degrees of effort and ambition, no matter how hard you push to reach 90, you'll eventually get pulled back down. But if you're around people who play life at 100 degrees, they won't let you coast. Their presence demands you rise. Look at anyone who's achieved mastery in business, sports, art, or impact. They all sought out environments where the bar was higher than what they were used to. They sought mentors, peers, and networks that forced them to think bigger. Because proximity isn't just about influence, it's about access. When you're in the room with people who already live where you want to be, you don't just get information. You get standards, energy, and a vision of what's possible. Most people underestimate how dramatically their peer group dictates their destiny. If you want a breakthrough, don't just ask what strategy you need, ask who you need to be around. You can't fly with eagles if you keep scratching with turkeys. And remember, proximity is not only about who you learn from, but also about who you avoid. Your future will be determined just as much by the people you remove as by the people you attract. Protect your energy. Don't confuse being kind with tolerating mediocrity in your circle. You become who you spend time with, and the fastest way to transform is to immerse yourself in an environment that makes the best version of you non-negotiable. Your brain is wired for survival, not success. It's built to scan for threats, to keep you alive, not to keep you fulfilled. That's why left unmanaged, the mind focuses on what could go wrong, what's missing, and what you can't control. That's not you being negative, that's evolution doing its job. But here's the thing, the same wiring that kept our ancestors alive will keep you trapped in fear if you don't train it. Success requires conditioning your brain every day to focus on possibility, opportunity, and solutions. It's like a muscle. If you don't train it, it gets weak, reactive, and lazy. This is why rituals matter. Gratitude, priming, visualization, movement. These aren't just feel-good practices. They're rewiring tools. They shift the default programming of the brain from survival to creation. Because you can't trust your brain to automatically make you successful. It's not designed for that. It's designed to make you survive. You have to take control of the steering wheel. Left alone, the mind will obsess about worst-case scenarios. Directed with discipline, it will build the future you dream of. The difference between people who break through and those who don't isn't luck, it's training. They've conditioned themselves to see opportunity where others see crisis, to act despite fear, to focus on what matters instead of reacting to what doesn't. Your brain is the most powerful weapon on the planet, but it only works if you learn to use it. If you want different results, raise your standards, not just your goals. Goals are what you hope will happen. Standards are what you commit must happen. Most people set goals as wishes. I want to lose weight. I want to make more money. I want a better relationship. But they don't raise their standards for what they will no longer tolerate. Nothing changes until your shoulds become musts. If your standard is, I should work out, you might or you might not. If your standard is, I must work out, it's done. That shift is everything. Think about it. You don't need to set a goal to brush your teeth. It's just who you are. It's non-negotiable. The same thing applies to every area of your life. If you want real transformation, you can't just write a list of goals. You have to raise the bar on what's acceptable for you. If your standard is that you only give 50%, then no matter how big your goal is, you'll sabotage yourself. But if your standard is that you demand excellence, you'll find a way to make it happen even when conditions are tough. And here's the key: once you raise your standard, your brain finds a way to make it real. You've done it before. Think about a time in your life when you finally said, never again. Maybe it was never again living paycheck to paycheck, never again tolerating that kind of relationship. Never again treating your body like it doesn't matter. That's when things shifted. You didn't need someone to motivate you. You raised your standard, and everything else aligned. Emotion is created by motion. Energy creates influence. The fastest way to change your emotion is to move your body. Too many people try to think their way out of a bad mood, but the body leads the mind. Change your breath, change your posture, change your movement, and you change your feelings. Stand tall, breathe deep, shake out your body, and you'll feel different in seconds. It's physiology. Your nervous system can't help but shift. Watch someone who's depressed. Their shoulders collapse, their breathing is shallow, their head is down. The body tells the story. Now watch someone who's confident and alive. They're upright, they breathe fully, they move with energy. Same human body, but the state is completely different. Emotion doesn't come from thinking alone, it comes from motion. That's why music, exercise, dancing, even clapping your hands can break you out of a negative loop. And when your energy changes, your influence changes. People feel you before they hear you. If you walk into a room drained, disconnected, low energy, no words will save you. But if you walk in lit up, present, full of vitality, people can't help but respond. Influence isn't about tactics, it's about transmitting energy. And that energy is a choice you make in every moment by how you use your body. Motion creates emotion, and emotion creates momentum. When you master your state physically, you become a leader emotionally. Trade expectation for appreciation, and you'll never be disappointed. Most people walk around with a silent rule book in their head about how life, how people, how the world should be. And when reality doesn't match those rules, they suffer. Expectations are premeditated resentments. You expect your partner to act a certain way, your kids to do what you want, your coworkers to treat you the way you treat them, the world to give you back what you put in. But life doesn't follow your script. And the more you demand it to, the more frustrated you become. The shift happens when you stop living in expectation and start living in appreciation. Because you can't feel fear and gratitude at the same time. You can't feel anger and gratitude at the same time. Gratitude dissolves suffering. It turns what you have into enough. And it turns ordinary moments into miracles. That's why some people with nothing feel rich, while others with everything feel empty. It's not what you have, it's what you focus on and appreciate. Think of the last time you were overwhelmed with gratitude. You weren't thinking about what was missing. You were fully present in what you already had. That state changes everything. You speak differently, you treat people differently, you see opportunities differently. And the truth is, you don't need more to feel that way. You just need to practice shifting your focus. People think gratitude is an emotion that comes when life is perfect, but it's a practice you choose when life isn't. Start small, gratitude for your breath, gratitude for the people who love you, gratitude for the chance to live another day. Train your nervous system to live in appreciation, and the world transforms before your eyes. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. There are people who have millions of dollars, fame, influence, and yet they're miserable. Because achievement without alignment leaves you empty. You can win the game of achievement and still lose the game of life. Fulfillment doesn't come from what you get. It comes from who you become and what you give. There are plenty of people who achieve their goals and then wonder, is this all there is? That's because they were chasing success, not fulfillment. Fulfillment comes from growth and contribution. Growth because if you're not growing, you're dying. Contribution because life's not about me, it's about we. When you grow and then give beyond yourself, that's when you feel alive. That's why some of the happiest people are not the wealthiest, but those who found a way to serve something larger than themselves. True fulfillment is the alignment of progress with purpose. And without it, all the trophies in the world feel hollow. Your problems are gifts. They drive growth, not defeat. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid problems. They pray for a life with no challenges, no obstacles, no pain. But a life with no problems is a life with no growth. Every breakthrough you've ever had was preceded by a problem. Every strength you have today was forged through a challenge you once thought was unbearable. Problems sculpt us, they stretch us, they demand we evolve. The difference between people who are crushed by problems and those who rise through them is meaning. If you see a problem as punishment, you'll suffer. If you see a problem as a teacher, you'll grow. Life will keep handing you the same challenge until you learn the lesson. That's not cruelty, that's coaching. And when you shift your perspective, problems stop being the enemy. They become feedback. They become the very raw material of your transformation. The bigger your problems, the bigger your life. Stop praying for fewer problems. Start praying for more skills. Because the size of your problems is never the issue. It's the size of you. Where focus goes, energy flows. Focus is the ultimate superpower. Your life is controlled by what you choose to give attention to. Focus is like sunlight. When it's scattered, it warms. When it's concentrated, it burns through anything. Most people scatter their focus across distraction, drama, fear, and things they can't control. And then they wonder why they feel drained. But when you discipline your focus, when you choose to put your energy on what matters most, your whole life changes. Focus shapes your emotions, your decisions, your destiny. Focus on what you can't control, you feel powerless. Focus on what you can, you feel unstoppable. Focus on problems, you'll drown in problems. Focus on solutions, you'll create momentum. It's not that successful people don't have problems, it's that they've trained their focus. They know that where focus goes, energy flows, and where energy flows, results show. The brain is always asking, what am I going to focus on? The past, the present, or the future? What does it mean? What am I going to do? These three questions shape every experience you have. If you focus on the past and what went wrong, you'll live in regret. If you focus on the future and what could go wrong, you'll live in anxiety. But if you focus on the present, on the resources you have right now, you'll live in power. And here's the truth. You always have a choice. Your focus is your freedom. Train it, discipline it, and it will serve you. Neglect it, and it will enslave you. The ability to direct your focus, regardless of circumstances, is the difference between a life of reaction and a life of creation. At the end of the day, everything we've been talking about comes back to this. Your life is not shaped by chance, it's shaped by choice. The quality of your life is the quality of your decisions, and those decisions are being made every single day, whether consciously or unconsciously. The decision to settle or to demand more. The decision to live in fear or to act with courage. The decision to blame circumstances or to take ownership. Every moment is a fork in the road, and most people drift because they don't decide with certainty. But the ones who live extraordinary lives, those who feel alive, fulfilled, impactful, they've conditioned themselves to make powerful decisions no matter what the conditions look like. And you already know, decisions don't come from thinking alone. They come from your state. Change your state, change your story, change your life. If you wait until you feel confident, you'll never act. If you wait until conditions are perfect, you'll never move. But when you master your state, when you shift your body, your focus, and your language, you step into power instantly. Suddenly the impossible becomes possible because you feel different, you see different, you act different. You can't tell yourself a story of weakness when you're in a peak state. You can't tell yourself a story of limitation when you're vibrating with energy. That's why the fastest way to change your life is to change your state first. And from that state, rewrite the story you've been telling yourself. But let's not forget, you don't do this alone. Proximity is power. Who you surround yourself with will either raise or lower your standards. Will either fuel your vision or drain your energy. Your peer group is the ultimate thermostat for your destiny. If you're around people who settle, you'll settle. If you're around people who play small, you'll shrink. But if you're around people who demand excellence, who think bigger, who live at a higher level, you won't have the luxury of staying where you are. You'll be pulled up, stretched, and challenged. You can't underestimate how much environment dictates destiny. You want to change your life? Change who you spend the most time with. Because proximity isn't just influence, it's immersion. At the same time, understand that your brain is not designed for your success. It's designed for your survival. Left unchecked, it will obsess about what could go wrong, what's missing, what might hurt you. That's the default. And if you let that run you, you'll live in constant stress, reacting instead of creating. But if you train it, if you discipline it, if you prime it daily with gratitude, focus, movement, visualization, you condition your nervous system to serve you instead of sabotage you. The mind left on autopilot will keep you small, but the mind trained with intention will build the future you dream of. The difference is daily conditioning, not occasional motivation. And with that, let's talk about standards. If you want to change your results, don't just set higher goals, raise your standards. Goals are what you hope will happen. Standards are what you commit must happen. Nothing changes until your shoulds become musts. Everyone says they want a better body, a better income, a better relationship, but wanting doesn't create change. What changes your life is when you decide what you will no longer tolerate and what you're going to hold yourself to. Once you raise your standard, everything else follows. You've done it before. You know there was a moment in your life when you finally said, never again, and from that moment on, everything shifted. Standards create identity, and identity drives destiny. But don't forget that emotion is the fuel behind every decision and every standard. Emotion is created by motion. You can't think your way into peak states. You've got to move your body, breathe differently, use your physiology. When you change your body, you change your feelings. When you change your feelings, you change your actions. And when you change your actions consistently, you change your life. People feel you before they hear you. If you walk into a room with low energy, nobody's moved by you. If you walk in lit up, fully alive, they can't help but respond. Energy is influence, and influence is leadership. If you want to lead your life, your family, your business, you've got to master your energy. Now let's zoom into what truly creates happiness. Trade expectation for appreciation and you'll never be disappointed. Expectations kill joy. They set you up for suffering because the world rarely matches the rule book in your head. But the moment you replace expectation with appreciation, you enter a state of abundance. Gratitude is the antidote to suffering. You can't be angry and grateful at the same time. You can't be fearful and grateful at the same time. Gratitude doesn't just make you feel good. It gives you strength. It gives you perspective. It makes life rich no matter what's happening. Practice it daily and you'll find yourself feeling full instead of empty, blessed instead of burdened. And here's the paradox of achievement. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. You can stack up the money, the trophies, the accomplishments, but if you don't feel fulfilled, you'll wake up one day and ask, is this all there is? Fulfillment doesn't come from what you get, it comes from what you grow into and what you give beyond yourself. Growth and contribution. That's the formula. If you're not growing, you're dying. If you're not contributing, you're stagnant. But when you're growing and serving something bigger than yourself, that's when you feel truly alive. So what about the challenges, the setbacks, the struggles? Your problems are gifts. Most people want a life without problems, but that would mean a life without growth. Problems stretch you, shape you, make you stronger. Every breakthrough you've ever had started with a problem you didn't think you could handle. Problems aren't punishments, they're training. They're feedback. They force you to expand, to innovate, to evolve. And the bigger your problems, the bigger your capacity to live an extraordinary life. Stop wishing for fewer problems and start building more skills. Your problems are not the end, they're the raw material for your next breakthrough. And all of this circles back to focus. Where focus goes, energy flows. Your life is the sum of what you consistently give attention to. Focus on the past and you live in regret. Focus on the future and you live in anxiety. Focus on the present, on what you can control, on what's possible, and you live in power. Focus on problems and they grow. Focus on solutions and they expand. Focus is the ultimate superpower because it shapes not just your thoughts, but your emotions, your actions, your identity. Most people waste their focus on distractions, but when you harness it, when you direct it, it becomes like a laser. It cuts through fear, through limitation, through doubt. So all of these principles connect. Decisions shape your destiny, but decisions come from your state. Your state is influenced by your standards, your motion, your focus, and the people you surround yourself with. Your brain will default to survival, but if you train it, it will create success. You'll never find fulfillment from achievements alone, only from growth and contribution. Gratitude will turn what you have into enough, and problems will give you the strength to become more. Where your focus goes, your life flows.